you said that today we should get to know why the president has represented Magu's name to the Senate. You believe that, the reasons for the rejection of his name would have been addressed in the letter that the president will send to the Senate. What if it's silent?
And thank you for the question on transparency. And I also have a view. I honestly think that this present administration needs to be more transparent. And I will explain why. When EFCC or DSS or any other agency of government that is tasked with responsibility of either investigation or prosecution undertake an action, before you say Jack Robinson, we see it in the media. So that means the government directly or indirectly is in touch with the media in order to bring this information to the Nigerians to understand the official act of government. In the same vein, we also expect that, like in the instance case that we're talking about, the government needs to bring this information to the public and let us know how these things are treated. But I want to believe strongly that if this information is, let's say the report is leaked to the media before the Senate had to sit on the matter, I believe that that would be like an insult on the integrity of the Senate, because they need to have that information first. They need to have a conversation on that. And if possible, it is the Senate, by their debate, that will now bring this information to Nigerians to understand whether or not Magu was cleared, and if he was cleared, how, if he was not cleared, why, and then we'll be able to form our own conclusion. But to wake up in the morning and get the report in the media before the Senate had to sit to read the letter, I don't think it is proper. But apart from that, the government needs to be transparent in their act. Whether you talk of the economy, whether you talk of the insurgency, whether you talk of in agriculture, in whatever
So transparency is one area where you believe that the government is not doing as well as it should.
I believe it.
Now that's one area, but I'm just focusing on this particular one, homing in on it. You say that this report should, beg your pardon, the letter written to the Senate President or the Senate should contain the reasons or should address the issues that the senators themselves had raised in their earlier rejection of Mr. Magu. I'm just wondering, what if that is not the case? What do you think the senators should do?
If the government sends a letter without making reference to the allegation, then there is every likelihood the Senate will reject him and then send his name back to the government, because it then means that that issue has not been addressed. Don't forget, when the Senate, the spokesman for the Senate told the media why they could not hear him in the plenary, and they had to hear him, why they could not discuss the matter in the plenary, but in the executive session. They said they merely rejected and then sent his name back to the presidency for further action. For further action means to look at the allegation, to investigate the allegation, or to lay him aside, get him prosecuted, and then appoint someone else. Now, if the presidency has addressed that matter, it is only natural that the presidency inform the National Assembly that this issue has been addressed. Now, the report, I believe that the report of the Attorney General will be sent along with the letter to the National Assembly.
You believe?
I believe.
What if it's not?
Because that, you see, that is in the natural course of event, and in the proceedings of the Senate, in their, what is it called? They call it, is it standing order or, order proceedings? They will read the letter, and then the Senate President will inform the House whether a report has been given to him or not, and his reservation. Then it will be open to the floor to now raise concern. Now, you asked the question, what if the presidency did not submit a report or explain the allegation? Now, first, I don't think it is this case. I don't think this is the case. But if it is, then I believe that if the National Assembly reject Magu, they will be right to have rejected him.
Now, because you have said that, you have said that if the presidency, if Mr. Magu is rejected, the president should present his name over and over again until the Senate eventually does what the president wants them to do. Can they really do that? I'm looking at a situation, for instance, where, Mr. Magu's name is presented on the floor, and there's there's discussion in plenary where they take questions from the candidate, that has been presented for confirmation, and then shortly after a vote is taken as to whether or not, he should be confirmed. Assuming, for instance, now that the senators have this conversation and then he is rejected, what then happens?
You see, I made that comment or statement having in mind the fact that the allegation has been cleared. Now, if Magu has been cleared, the other side of the allegation,
yes.
The other side of the argument is that the Senate, by law and by right, can decide to reject a candidate without giving a reason. There are people who have argued that. So if they have the right to reject without giving a reason, the president has the right to keep presenting until the person is accepted. My comment is based on that. But if, for example, the president resubmits his name, but in the open debate, because it should not stop at the debate, Magu must be heard consequently. You have to be able to bring the nominee to the floor of the Senate and then put the questions to him.
What if they're not impressed with his performance on the floor of the Senate? There are people who don't speak very well, or people who can't recite the national anthem. We've seen instances like that.
The only person that would not be impressed by the performance of Magu is either a corrupt public officer or beneficiary of a corrupt public officer. But there is the other side of the argument, and then rightly so. The fight against corruption by the EFCC, sometimes there is no due regard to the rule of law.
Isn't that blackmailing the senators?
No, it is not. I have a right as a citizen to express my opinion. I have a right to express my opinion about my perception about the Senate.
The question is, I mean, you say that the only person who will not be impressed by his, his performance is someone who is corrupt. What if he doesn't do well? I mean, in terms of how he speaks and addresses the questions that are posed before him.
I thought the performance you meant was the performance as the chairman of Economic Financial Crimes Commission. But if the performance you're referring is performance in the floor of the Senate with respect to responding to questions, then it will be within the discretion of the Senate. Because the truth of the matter is that the confirmation as envisioned by the Constitution is to check the suitability of the candidate. And so the Senate by law, if they put questions to you and you are not able to answer adequately and convincingly, then the truth of the matter is that they can arrive at the conclusion that you are not suitable for the job. But in this case, it is different. Because Magu is not an outsider. Magu is somebody who has been in EFCC from day one. Magu is someone who has been working in EFCC. Magu is someone who has even been acting in acting capacity. So when you are putting questions to him, you should be mindful of the fact that Nigerians are aware of the successes achieved by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. So much conviction, so much. I know the media aspect. Lots of people are complaining because most of these stops at arraignment, we don't hear that the public officer is prosecuted. And I hold the view that in some cases, the EFCC is at fault, especially when they continue to, without reason, oppose bail application. It will delay trial. And at the end of the day, the trial will last longer than necessary, and the masses get fed up with the anti-corruption war regarding a particular individual. So I hold a reservation in that regard. But overall, the EFCC has performed creditably well, and Nigerians know that. And therefore, if he appears before them and they put a question, probably calculated questions, just like in cross-examination, a lawyer can decide to put a question to you, and the question has answer in its own. Or he would decide calculatively to put a question in order to box you. Assuming that these senators decide, okay, let us lynch him, let us box him, and they start putting questions to him that are not necessarily. Magu is within his right not to respond.
Shouldn't he expect that? Shouldn't he be prepared for that?
I believe that Magu should be prepared. But let me say something in a side. The last time Magu was here on channels, I watched it on TV. I was not impressed by his response. When questions were put to him, he was not willing to answer. In a democratic society, even a general, when he appears before the media, because you see the media, they are the reflection, the mirror of the society. The questions that Nigerians have are the questions the media put forward to a public officer. It is expected that when you are asked a question, you should be able to answer. If you feel that you are not capable of doing that, next time when you are invited, don't go send someone on your behalf to go and answer the question. So if I think of his last appearance in channels, I could think that some mischievous senators might decide to take advantage of that and ask offensive questions in order to get him off the balance.
Well, we'll see how that eventually plays out on the floor of the Senate, especially as we expect that the Senate President will be reading out the President's letter today. Daniel Bwala, we have to thank you very much for coming on Sunrise Daily. He's a legal practitioner and also a member of Lincoln's Inn in London.